What's up, everybody? I don't know if that came through good, but I think the intro was clipping around on us a little bit. But hey, welcome everybody on this great Monday, September 22nd, 2025 for episode 65 of the Daily BLP. I am your host, Brian Collins, here as always by myself right now, but Matt might be jumping in to join us. But I got a nice little show in store for everybody who tunes in now or in the future. So I was in the office this morning, minding my own business as I tend to do when I get in, especially on a Monday, as we all do, coming in from a weekend where you're trying not to do too much work, but getting in, checking on emails, doing a few things, working on some stuff, making sure my Mac that I just updated over the weekend was stopped going haywire like it was earlier last week. But I'm doing my own thing. My business partner, Manny, comes in and he's like, "Hey, are you doing the podcast right now?" No, it's like 10 in the morning, man. What are you doing? He sits down on the couch right outside the office, the studio here, and he's got this concerned look on his face. And I'm like, "Manny, what's up? Come on in, have a seat. Do you need to talk?" And he comes in and he's like, "Did you hear about this law that's trying to get passed?" I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, buddy. I don't know. And so he said that there was a bill that someone had written and was proposing to put a 25% tax on offshore payments and services and things to companies that U.S. companies, would pay offshore people to help out with what they're doing here for U.S. consumers. No, I didn't hear anything about it. And, he's freaking out a little bit, because a good portion of what we do here is predicated on the fact that we've got quite a few people in another country helping us out. And, that's been something that has been, it was hard for me to wrap my head around when we first started doing it. Once I learned kind of, what salaries are like in the company or in the country that we work in, which in this case is India, probably one of the biggest, most popular outside of maybe China or the Philippines or something, but it's huge services, outsourced overseas services in India is a huge hundreds of billions of dollars every year in that line of work. And I was taken aback a little bit. I hadn't heard anything about it. And so I'm like, I don't know what that is. Let me look into it. So, he was like, of course we're all, oh my God, what's happening? Is this an administration thing? Blah, 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 whatever. So, I curbed that enthusiasm or fear. And I got around to it a little bit later today after, normal stuff had to get done. And I figured I'd talk about it on a show because I think it's a big thing that obviously affects a lot of small businesses, whether you're a one-person show trying to get a lot done or you're a big mega enterprise corporation with thousands of employees, and a big portion of those might be in India or in the Philippines or in Mexico or in, you name the country, where salaries are lower. And so the one thing that I wanted to kind of point out, the first thing that kind of struck me when I looked up this legislation, and you can look it up for yourself. If you go to Mr. Moreno, Bernie Moreno is a U.S. Senator from Ohio that wrote this bill that I have printed up right here. And the one thing that kind of just rubbed me the wrong way is the kind of the way it was written. So you can go to his website, www.moreno.senate.gov, and then go to their press releases and you can find this press release. But here's what it said. It's, there's a Washington Today, Senator Bernie, blah, 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 blah. Anyway. And then there was a quoted part from him, the second paragraph. I'm just going to read this because it just rubbed me the wrong way as somebody who has a business that we leverage overseas support. And I know people are torn, and sometimes over the years I have been too. But it says, while college grads in America struggle to find work, globalist politicians and C-suite executives have spent decades shipping good-paying jobs overseas in pursuit of slave wages and immense profits. Immense profits? Yeah. We'll talk about that. Those days are over. Yeah, for sure. Said Moreno, it's time to fight for working class Americans and ensure they can work and retire with dignity. If companies want to hire foreign workers instead of Americans, my bill will hit them where it hurts, in their pocketbooks. Okay, so I don't know Bill. I've never met Bill. I've never seen anything that he's done. He's got a lot of legislation. He's got a lot of things that are out there. And I can't say anything necessarily good or bad about the guy. I'm sure he's a great guy. But, when you do these kind of things, especially in a press release, the marketing teams tend to paint things in broad strokes to play at people's emotions, right? It got at my emotions because I got a company and we outsource a lot of stuff. We are a company that gets work from other companies that they want to outsource to us, some of which happens here in the U.S., some of which does not. What typically happens is those things that we do that don't get taken care of in the U.S. is because the prices are so low and competitive around the country on those things that if we hired a full team of people to do things here, we would be double, triple, or more of the price points. There would be no deals. Now, I don't sell on price, but there would be no closes if that was all done here. Done in the way that we do things now. So, sorry, my kids are giving me colds. My daughter's home from school today because she's got a bad cold. I think I'm getting it too. I'm going to just try to say it's allergies, but it's probably not. Anyway, when you hear these powerful words like globalist politicians and C-suite executives, last I know, my office was not anything labeled a suite or a C anything, right? Have spent decades shipping good paying job overseas in pursuit of slave wages and immense profits. I don't want to address that because when I first went into business with my good friend Manish, who I lovingly call Manny because it's easier to say, and I think Manny sounds cooler. But Manish, when we first went into business together and we started kind of coming up with our pricing structure and how we were going to bring our service to market and what our message was going to be and all those kind of things, I eventually got to the point where I was like, well, we're going to be working with the teams over there and some people, and I'm going to need them to, I might bring them into some of my calls as kind of the subject matter experts when people want to say, hey, who are the people that are actually are the experts? Well, I'll pull my experts in. They're awesome. Yeah. But Mandy's like, well, if you have them in on the calls, you can't talk about price. I'm like, what do you mean I can't talk about price? And he's like, well, because what we charge, there's a huge gap between what we charge and what people make in our staff in India. And I said, well, what's the deal? He's like, well, we don't want the staff over there knowing how much we charge and all the details, taking that information, leaving and going and starting their own company and doing the same things. Because, they'll, take our IP and similar kind of things happen here in the US, but I've always just been used to having the people on my teams. It's, everybody knows everything. People just know that it's not just about what you charge and what you pay your people. Everything in between gets eaten up really, really, really fast. Now, that being said, there is definitely a difference in what the salaries are in our India office as well as than they are in our U.S. office. And so I talked to Manny about that. I'm like, so what's up with all that? So he explained, and I had to wrap my head around this, but it makes sense. He's like, you got to understand, Brian, we're all on the same globe, but the cultures and the economic realities and all the things that are happening economically in a country like India is much different than a country like the U.S. And I said, well, how do you mean? He said, well, take it this way. He goes, if I go to Best Buy or Walmart and buy a computer, I can get a pretty good computer for a few $100 and great. Technology over there is going to cost me a lot more. So a computer over here that costs $500 over there might cost $1,000, right? But he said other things are much, 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 much more affordable and much cheaper for a lifestyle. He said, a person that makes an income like you do, Brian, and this was back in like 2016, 2017, comparable in India, he'd say like what he would make over in India can live a very, very good lifestyle. And I say, well, I live a good lifestyle here. He's like, no, you don't understand. He's like, you, Brian, you own a home. Yeah, I own a home. And you have a car, a couple. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you have kids and you pay for them to go to school and public school and all these kind of things. And, you buy groceries and they cost you a couple $100 when you go get them and you can feed them for a week and stuff like that. He goes, you go out to eat. It might cost you $50, $100 to take your wife out to eat or maybe your kids or whatever, a lot more right now. But he said, in India, I could send my son out with the equivalent of $5 US, and he could eat like a king all day long in India. And that $5, will buy him breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and maybe even a haircut. And everybody that was paid that lives a relatively good lifestyle too. There, like you can afford an apartment, you can afford clothes, you can afford your mobile devices, your computers, your lifestyle, and you don't over there. It doesn't cost a $50,000 salary. That salary that yes is a fraction of what the salary is over here. In some cases, gets you a lot more value than your higher salary here in the U.S. He said, like all of his, he owns his home in India. He has his vehicles for him and his wife. And he has services that come in and clean, or even in our offices in India. Like when I'm on Zoom calls with our team in India, they're sitting at their computer. We're going over things, going over plans, whatever onboardings or whatever we're doing. And there's people at the office serving our team like chai lattes or tea or lunch, or bringing them things and doing. We have taxi services that our company provides for our staff, because a lot of the staff work in the middle of the night, third shift, because that's when our clients are awake here. So they're working third shift. So all of our female staff in India, it's required that we pay for their transportation to and from work. And so we do that. That's a part of the expense that people don't understand. That's not cheap. But all these, it's a shift in what the culture allows to be economically acceptable and affordable, that over here, I can't afford to bring somebody in to do my laundry, but it's normal over there for someone lower middle or upper middle class. They have services that come in and they're very affordable, and they'll come in, do their laundry, do their dishes, get things cleaned up, take care of everything, spend the day at their house and go on. Like maybe I could, but I don't want to. I don't want that expense. That eats up something else. You know what I mean? So I've never been able to afford a nanny. I live pretty good, but I don't have a nanny for my kids. My wife, I'd love to be able to buy her somebody to make sure that she didn't have to do laundry all the time and pay for that and all those. It's just, I would need to make a couple jumps in order to justify being able to pay for something like that, if that makes sense to everybody. So it's not just as easy to say, because our staff that does a comparable duty to someone that would do it over here, because they don't get paid the same wage, it's not realistic to say that's slave labor. Like there's nobody that we have in our offices that we pay so little that they can't live a comfortable lifestyle based on where they are at in, our company structure. And our company is built to bring people in, to train them relatively quick, to give them opportunities to advance quickly based on the skills and the merit that they bring to their job. I mean, most of our folks in India that are in, let's say, team leader or management roles or director roles, they're like kind of homegrown. We're not sourcing people way up here out of nowhere. We've got a couple people that are in manager roles that didn't work their way up, and that's only because those were newly formed teams where we started new lines of service and brought people in, and we needed to have a structure to that. So that kind of thing, that kind of writing kind of rubs me the wrong way just a little bit. But that being said, let's move into the bill a little bit. Let's talk some details. So I'm not going to read it. You can go and read it. Check out the press release at the bottom. You can click on there and get your own copy of it. But I actually did some work, and I didn't have GPT do all this for me. But I did. I asked a couple questions on things I didn't know about, so I could share that. So this act is called the HIRE Act. Well, what the heck does the HIRE Act stand for? Well, it's an acronym. HIRE stands for Halting International Relocation of Employment. So what this says is that if this passed, starting, I'm guessing, since it doesn't count for anything before December 31st of this year, it would be starting January 1 of next year, that any U.S. Company that outsources to a foreign person or foreign company, any payments made to those companies for services for U.S. consumers would be hit immediately with a 25% tax. Immediately, meaning whenever the taxes are filed or done or paid, you're going to get a 25% tax on any of those monies that were sent over to pay for people to do work overseas in other countries. Doesn't count U.S. territories, but other countries that are sovereign entities themselves for doing work for U.S. consumers. So that means, outsourcing of any premiums, fees, royalties, service charges. And so we're a service company. So all of our fees are services. And yeah. So this would 100% apply to us, which it's I'm not going to lie, it's a little scary. We have to figure some things out for sure. Other details about this is, it's self-reporting, right? And as any taxes, when you're doing taxes, you have to report this. If you're found that you're doing it, you didn't report it, you're in big trouble. If you fail to pay for this additional tax, it actually increases up to 50%. So that's not pretty. If this does happen and people fall under this, my guess is a lot of people are going to pull a lot of that back, which is why this was made in the first place. But a 50% hike in that tax is substantial. So where does all this money go that would get taxed? What's all this? Is just going to go in the coffers and people can, fly around to Vegas and spend money like, government agencies never do that stuff ever. But so what's this for? So what it says is that any money collected off this Hire Act via increased taxes would go to a domestic workforce fund. It'd be housed in the U.S. Treasury, funded, like I said, by the Hire Act, things that would go towards workforce development, apprenticeship programs and apprenticeship and partnership programs, and state grants for communities that have been affected negatively by mass outsourcing. I don't know, would that be like a city? Would that be like an ethnic community? I have no idea what that means. But that's what is saying it would be for. The other kicker on this is any of those monies that you're paying to pay for those services for your customers, those are expenses for a business, right? Normally expenses are tax deductible. This is a denial of any tax deduction on those monies. So not only will they be taxed at 25% if they're paid on time, 50% if they're not, but also you can't claim any of those monies that you would be paying to an outsource agency overseas. You can't claim any of that as a tax deduction. So you smacked around a couple of times here. So what does all this imply, right? Is this happening? Is this passed? Like Manny was freaking out this morning. And so I looked into it. So we can all just kind of pump the brakes a bit. Doesn't mean it couldn't get passed. Definitely could. But we might want to pump the brakes a little bit and not get too excited because there's a good chance that nothing will ever come of this. Right now, it was initially introduced and created on May 8th of this year. So it's been around a few months. Nobody heard about it. I don't know if when the press release, I didn't see a date on it. Maybe I just didn't look hard enough, but I didn't see a date on that typical press release. Maybe it was from the other day because what happened on the 19th of September is Senator Moreno attempted to push it through to vote on with unanimous consent on the 17th. But this was blocked by Democrats. Interesting kind of thing there. I'm pretty sure, I could double check, but I'm pretty sure Moreno is a Republican. Great. But this is a double-edged sword thing, right? Obviously, it affects me personally and our company. But when you look at the grand scheme of things and how all these kind of political things and attempts to make big changes and regulate things, and here's my opinion. I'm all about bringing jobs and everything back to the States. I'm all about that. But when it comes to what my company does, maybe something like this changes it all down the road. It's just going to increase the price like a lot of these things. But, we don't make a huge profit I mean, we're trying to figure out ways right now to get more profit into our company. We're trying to increase things like not only just profitability, but the revenue per employee, or RPE is nowhere near where it should be on any of our lines of service. We're profitable, but not so much that we can put money aside every year to even really reinvest in our business. It's a month-to-month kind of thing where like services get done, invoices go out, bills get paid, people get paid, and there's a couple pennies left, right? Like we're spending money on sales and marketing. That's reinvesting in the business, but we could be doing a lot more and growing a lot faster if we had more profits to put back in. And every year, for our employees that are doing a great job, we have to sit down and have a real conversation about raises and that kind of things. And if we're not making a good margin, then we can't do that, whether it's over there in our India office or over here. So it's a struggle, right? Like none of us are millionaires right now in our company, just raking in the cash. That probably happened 20 years ago when a lot of these service type of companies decided, hey, we're just going to get rid of all of our U.S. employees, do it all in India or China or wherever, and nobody's going to know. We're going to charge the same high prices and just make a bigger profit. Well, that doesn't happen now. Now what happens is so many people are doing that. It's driven the price of the services down so low because there's so much competition. Everybody's like, well, I'm going to charge a little less. And it would, over the years, is just eating away at that profit. Now we're at the point where it's profit margins are worse than retail in what we do right now. So that's the reality of it. But it got blocked, like I said, by Democrats. It's interesting. I think that's interesting too, because typically you would think, like, okay, Democrats, they want to block this, but isn't the point of this to like get more jobs and job creation stuff for, the working class people here in our country? You'd think that, that's literally what it says it does, and I thought the Democratic Party was the party of the working class, but maybe I've got something wrong there. Maybe somebody can correct me on that. Or I'm sure there's plenty of nuances that someone could school me on, but at its core level, blocking something like this, which at this point, I guess I'm thankful for because I'm not prepared for it to happen. Blocking something like this is definitely not pro-U.S. worker. That's for sure. It's been referred to committee. On the committee that handles things like taxation and stuff like that is the Senate Committee on Finance. So it's apparently in front of that committee. It's got no co-sponsors, so there's no leadership from either party behind this. Senator Moreno would have to really convince probably bipartisan leadership to get on board to get this through. And there's been no real indication of any like major lobbyists or corporations trying to do any work to stop this. Maybe they're just not taking it seriously. But I do know I'm not even on anybody's radar when it comes to how it affects me. There's multi-billion-dollar companies that are spending a lot of their money and resources, for these kind of things overseas. And I honestly, the way things are going right now, I think a bigger threat to people's actual jobs, at least existentially, is AI. A lot more than people overseas. Because here's what's happening. I'm just going to be honest. Like I talk to a lot of people across different types of industries, and we work with companies that help us with lead gen and stuff like that. And the feedback that I'm getting, I got to get some wireless headphones. The feedback that I'm getting is that there's a pendulum swing going back the other way when it comes to, let's say, something like revenue cycle management services is something that we do. And we've got a tremendous team in India that works with our smaller team here in the US to provide services for our clients here in the US. We've got super smart people, professional people that have been in this business for multiple years, tens of years. It's not like hundreds of years. It hasn't been going on that long. But really good people that work really hard, who I'm tremendously blessed to have, on our team. But what's happened over the years is that there's a bit of, what's the word I should use? I can't think of it, but clinics, hospitals, medical institutions over here that have worked with outsourced agencies in other countries, not just India. There's countries like Pakistan. There's like I said, like there's Philippines. There's South America, Central America, Mexico. They've had services from companies that have done a very poor job of supporting those teams and giving them the tools and the environments to work in that are good. And it shows through in the work that gets done. So the feedback that I get from people is that when you're selling your service, if, the medical clinic realizes before they even get to talk to you and learn anything about you that you're just outsourcing your stuff in India and they're never going to get to work with somebody here in the States, that they might not even talk to you because they've been burned so many times. Not necessarily burned it's not like they haven't been scammed. They've been burned because they've been matched up with teams from different countries overseas that didn't care, that were only doing the minimum amount of work because they knew their minimum amount of pay was a fraction of the more pay that someone in the U.S. would be getting. So there was some resentment that was coming through from those teams, and it was affecting the work and the communication. And of course, there's a lot, other countries don't have the same regulations that we do, and they get a bad rap, but I'm not trying to stereotype, but some countries is like the wild, wild west when it comes to doing business with people. You have to be really careful with who you do business with, because just answering an email that came to your business email from a Gmail account with a bunch of numbers in front of the @ sign saying that they're going to do a great job and it's going to be a fraction of the price. Be careful. Just be careful. So one of the reasons we organized ourselves the way we did is because we're under all the laws of the U.S. If we don't do a really good job of building a good team in any of our offices that aren't here where we're located in the U.S., all of us are at risk here as well. And I've got, employees here that their life, their lifeblood, their, money and income from their families is on the line, as well as our folks in our India offices. So it's a real possibility. This could definitely happen. And it's kind of scary. We should take it seriously internally, which we will. And we'll make plans accordingly, but we're not going to overreact for sure. Because, again, there's not any momentum. There's no public, kind of outside of, maybe some small headlines recently. There's nobody like getting behind this and really pushing it hard. So again, I'm not going to not take it seriously, but it could still have a lot of impact on a lot of people. And that's, whether it's impact for our team members overseas, if we can't work with them anymore, or being able to do what we do because the cost of doing business here is astronomical. It really is. So that's that. That's all I really have for you for the Hire Act. It was fun learning about it. This is honestly, I'm sad to say this. It's the first time I've actually read a bill. And I took government classes in high school and some very menial stuff in college that they made us do. But I remember there was a time when I thought learning about the government was cool, but then I got old enough to want to drive cars and date girls and play football and stuff. So learning about the government and keep being serious about that went away. But I'm going to pay more attention to that kind of stuff now. It's not the most fun thing to read if you don't have like a legal background, but it's not that hard to figure it out either. So if you want to look into it yourself, like I said, check out Bernie Moreno's website. The bill's up there. You can read it for yourself. It's not even a 10-minute read. It's pretty short. And keep yourself educated and up to date on this kind of stuff because it matters. It definitely matters. Well, what time is it? 4:31. Hey, we're right on time. Half an hour for the show. It's been a great little show. Appreciate everybody tuning in. We're going to sign off for today, episode 65 of the Daily BLP. Again, I was your host, Brian Collins. We'll see all you guys tomorrow. Take care, everybody.